Hey guys, I am here today with Kris Militano with Inspect and Save, and he is the best in Brevard. He's also a pilot and a general contractor, so he knows houses from the ground up. And today we're going to be going over different types of inspections, why we need an inspection, and stay tuned for the end where he's going to tell us some crazy stories about the inspecting world. So
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Sure. Yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. So how did you get into the inspecting world?
I went to school at FIU in Miami and studied building construction down there at the School of Construction Engineering. And after graduating from there, I worked in the commercial construction field for a while. And eventually I changed over to become a pilot. I had a dream of always wanting to be a pilot, and I ended up going to flight school.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was flying for United Express and Midway Connection in Northrop Grumman here.
Okay.
And built up enough hours where I was finally marketable to go talk to the majors, and then 9/11 happened, and so that kind of changed everything. They stopped hiring pilots for a while, so
Yeah.
I went back into construction and started doing custom homes, high-end custom homes, and built a lot of those up and down Brevard County here. And I still have my general contractor's license. I keep that active, and just for small things I want to do, or maybe something larger. But inspection-wise, in about 2008, the construction industry took a downturn, so I went looking for other opportunities, and I found there was no qualified inspectors that I felt had the qualifications, no inspectors that I felt had the qualifications that I have as a general contractor, so I thought it was a good opportunity. So
Yeah.
I opened up Inspect and Save, and it's been just growing and gangbusters ever since, and I love it. I get to meet new people every time I go out, and I feel like I'm helping people, especially the first-time home buyers that are completely unaware, and I don't mind taking the time and kind of holding their hand and helping them get to the stage of where they can go to closing, get them to the closing table with you guys.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of first-time home buyers, what are the different types of inspections that you do and that you would recommend a first-time home buyer get?
So typically we start off with the regular full home inspection. That's going to cover an array of pretty much everything about the home. And there's certain things you could build off of that particular inspection. The pool inspections, you can get a pool inspection. Some people elect to do that. If it's a very complicated pool, I oftentimes will say, we recommend get a separate pool inspector. I do provide a courtesy overview where I can, tell them, look, you have a leak here on this, or that's not working as it should. Also septic inspections that I usually provide a name of a couple of guys that do those. I don't do septics. I don't do termites. I don't like bugs, and I don't like septic.
Yeah.
So typically any buyer, not just a first-time buyer, you'd want to get something that would check out, a septic system if it has one, or, if it's termites, that's always a big item too. In certain areas here in Brevard, we've had, known to have termites. So those would be the main ones. Some people also elect to get what they call a scoping, sewer scope. So if it doesn't necessarily have a septic system, it's on city sewer. A lot of the houses that are built on the beach side, they have cast iron pipes. If they're older, maybe 1967 and below, may have cast iron pipes. And those type of pipes have issues, and insurance companies will tend to raise their premium if they find out they have those. So it sometimes is worth the extra cost to have a plumber come out. Usually it's a plumber, because sometimes they'll remove a toilet and run their scope through it that way, or they go in through the roof, through the vents. And so, yeah.
Awesome. And what's the difference between a 4-point and a wind mitigation?
So the 4-point is typically for an older home. It used to be that anything 30 years of age and older required a 4-point. And they've changed that recently. These insurance companies have changed quite a bit of their requirements. They continually change, as you probably know.
Yes.
So they have gone down to some of them to 15 years and older. So basically the 4 points, your 4 main points are your roof, your electrical, your plumbing, and your AC. And it's a fairly quick inspection because they just want, as an inspector, us to go through and take photos under the sinks to verify there's no active leaks. Take a look at the electrical panel. There's certain panels that you can't have. They want to make sure that there's no double taps in the electrical panel, things like that, or any fried breakers, any burned wires, because sometimes we'll see that, especially on an older home. The other thing is aluminum wiring. That's another big thing that they don't like to see. And there's certain requirements they'll have you do if you decide to purchase a house with aluminum wiring. They may say we want you to get what they call, a connector that will allow the aluminum to connect to the copper. So
interesting.
Yep. So the four main things: the roof. They want at least to have. It used to be 3 years of life remaining on the roof. A lot of the insurance companies have upped that to 5 years.
Wow.
And so, sometimes they want us to, every time for the 4-point, they want us to provide photos of the roof to show that there's no deterioration on the shingles if it's a shingle roof. Tile roof, we can't have a bunch of cracked tiles and loose tiles. Metal roofs, they don't want a bunch of rusted panels and things like that. So the roof, the electrical, the plumbing, and the AC. And plumbing wise, they don't like to see polybutylene and leaks. And then the AC, they want to know that it's a working AC and that you have an air conditioner that has a heater in it. Sometimes people wonder why, and it's because they don't want to have someone using space heater. Florida, we do get 1 or 2 nights a year that get cold. So we occasionally will have to put on the heat, and especially if you have babies and you want to keep the baby warm. So they don't want you to use space heaters, and that's one of the questions on a 4-point, are space heaters being used? So when we're there doing the inspection, we look around, to verify they don't have space heaters. Some of the window units, they'll have a built-in heater, which is good, but if because you can use those, but if you don't have a heater, then it kind of puts up a red flag for the insurance company.
Interesting.
Correct, yeah. And then you asked about the wind mitigation. The wind mitigation is not a required inspection, but most everybody gets it because it helps you get discounts. There's like 7 or 8 items on that form, and based on how the roof is tied to the walls, that's one of the questions. Does it have hurricane clips? Is it a toenail connection or toenail where they drive a nail at an angle? That's how they did it in the old school. Or now, on the newer homes, concrete block houses, they have a strap it wraps up and over. And we have to verify it has a minimum of 2 nails on the front strap, and then as it wraps over, 1 nail in the back. Most of them in the newer homes have 5 or 6 nails and 2 or 3 on the other side. But at least 2 on the front and 1 on the back, and that allows you to get a cheaper insurance because the insurance company knows, okay, this house meets our standards.
Okay, and it's more likely to survive wind or
Correct.
Any issues with hurricanes, things like that.
Yep, and same with shutters. Some of these homes have older shutters, and the shutters don't necessarily have the proper labels on them. The wind mitigation form says they must meet one of the following testing requirements, and not only Miami-Dade approved, but also must meet one of these 4 testing requirements. And they have certain testing facilities, that mostly in South Florida, that the shutters have to be tested at to ensure that they're going to take the impact.
Wow.
And you used to be able, I don't know if you still can, you used to be able to go to one of the local big stores like Home Depot or Lowe's and purchase shutters, and they did not meet the requirements. So that's why it's important and to ensure that, because a lot of times people will buy a house and they may have the old clamshell shutters that kind of come down over the window. Those won't give you the discounts. So they must, that's why the insurance companies say, well, we'll lower your premium, but you have to meet our requirements in order to do so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is it ever worth it for people to make those changes before they sell or after they buy a property to try to get that discount? Does it seem to offset?
I usually tell people in a situation like that to talk to their insurance agent, because sometimes you could spend $10,000. Excuse me. Sometimes you can spend $10,000 on purchasing shutters or impact windows, but it may not save you anything near that, or depending on how long you're going to keep the home. So if you're going to spend $15,000 putting all new impact windows inside the house, but you're only going to live there for 2 years, and it saves you $300 a year, is it worth it?
Right. I guess that's a case-by-case
correct.
situation.
Yeah, you might want to talk to your insurance agent just to see, well, hey, how much more can I save? And a lot of times people think they have to do everything on the wind mitigation form to get the best discounts they can. The insurance companies will only give you up to 86% discount. And
Wow.
that being said, if you have a new roof, anything done after March 1st, 2002, that's when the Florida Building Code changed. Anything done after March 1st, 2002 meets the new, well, it's no longer new, but it meets the standards of Miami-Dade. That used to be the big standard that all builders would try to meet. When I would build homes, even though we weren't required to meet the Miami-Dade requirements, as a builder, I would do so just because it was a better product to sell.
Right.
So if you now have a roof put on after March 1st, 2002, the insurance companies recognize that and they give you a cheaper premium on your insurance.
Interesting.
Yep.
And are new builders typically building with up to these codes and with wind mitigation in mind, or you don't?
They're required to now,
Okay.
especially here in Brevard County.
Okay.
But they used to not have to, and so that's why sometimes we'll find that the shutters don't necessarily meet the requirements that are required today.
Gotcha.
So it does make a difference, and that's why the insurance companies have those forms, because they don't want to just blanketly give everyone a discount just because you say, hey, we built this to meet the codes,
Right.
And sometimes we'll get up there, or
And
when
it's-
people do a re-roof, for instance, a lot of times they'll hire, a friend of a friend, and they won't pull a permit. And so the wind mitigation ensures to the insurance company that it was done to their standards, because a lot of times when they re-shingle a roof, they may not re-nail the roof deck. You're supposed to re-nail it with an 8D nail. And if they didn't do that, if we go up in the attic and we can't see that they did that, then it's going to cause a red flag. We can't give them that discount. And so, that's a big thing. And pulling the permits is another big thing.
Right.
A lot of people have re-roofed thinking, I don't need to pull a permit, especially after a big storm. They think, they didn't require permits, and they actually did require them, but they were waiving permit fees.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that can delay closing. That can cause all sorts of problems. We got lucky on one of the houses that we did recently. They didn't pull a permit, and luckily they were able to close that specific one out in time. But in another situation, it could have delayed closing, and it would have been a whole mess.
I've heard of horror stories where people just put a new roof on 2 to 3 months prior to listing the house, but they didn't pull a permit. And the buyer went to buy it, and the insurance company said there was a permit pulled. I don't care if you say it's 2 months old, and they literally had to remove the roof and redo it.
No
with a permit.
way.
So it happens, and
Yikes. Yeah,
So-
we don't want that.
yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of don't want that, are there any specific things here in Florida or in general in the inspecting world that first-time home buyers or seasoned home buyers alike should keep their eyes out for, big red flags or?
Typically, one of the things we run into a lot are the electrical panels. And as a realtor, if you're looking at homes, one of the things you can look for immediately when you go into the garage or wherever the electrical panel is check and see if it's a Federal Pacific, or a Zinsco is another brand, or Sylvania. They actually bought out Zinsco, but most insurance companies don't like that. So that would be one of the big red flags that you would need to keep an eye on, keep an eye out for. And also plumbing, if you can keep an eye on plumbing, if it does, if you can also look at the plumbing to determine if they have polybutylene pipes. You may not be 100%, but if you do see a gray pipe coming out from underneath the sink, or if you see it coming out from by the toilet, that's a red flag. That would be something to say, hey, we may have to replumb the house. Some of the older homes that are beachside, a lot of them have cast iron pipes. Homes typically built prior to 1967 or so.
Okay.
A lot of those have cast iron pipes, and they tend to have problems. And you've probably seen commercials on TV, or Morgan and Morgan, or somebody wants to help.
Yeah.
But so there are things you can look for as a realtor to help your client before you even say, hey, let's make an offer. And as I've stated to many of my realtor friends, if you have any questions, call me, text me, show me a picture of it, and say, hey, is this something we can, proceed forward with, or what would we need to expect? Do we need to replace this?
Right. Yeah, and that would be so helpful because there's times that we're showing a property and it might be FHA or maybe it's conventional, but we just aren't sure, and we can just shoot you over a picture of it. And
absolutely,
to be able to know going into negotiations kind of where you stand is invaluable as an agent. So
I would imagine,
that's awesome that you do that.
Yeah.
And as far as, those are some of the red flags. How would you set expectations for a first-time home buyer? I know a lot of them expect it to be perfect, and that's not the case. So what's the difference in normal wear and tear versus like a major red flag? Or let's look at this, let's evaluate.
And that's a great question. A lot of times the new home buyers don't realize that nicks on the baseboard and things like that are common, and they think, oh, it's supposed to be brand new because I'm buying a new home. Well, it may be new to them, but not necessarily to the 30-year-old house that's been there.
Right.
But there are certain things that I would, like to just kind of make sure I always try to make sure that the buyer's aware of. Just because an AC is older doesn't mean that they're going to get a new AC. When they go to, I get that question a lot. Well, the AC is, 15 years old. Shouldn't you write that up? Well, we do write it up as it's a little older, but it also, if it's working condition and meets the standards of the cooling perimeter, then you can't expect to get a new AC for something like that. So
right.
If the water heater is older and it's not leaking and it's still performing, I've seen some of them last 30 plus years, and I've seen some last 5 years.
Wow.
And so it really makes a difference. Sometimes the pressure relief valve will seep a little bit of water. It gets down in the pan, and the pan starts rusting, or it's holding the water, rusts out the water heater. So they need to understand that when they're looking at a house, there's going to be issues. There always is. And as a home inspector, we're not there to say this is a warranty. This is something that we're there to say this is what we found.
Right.
Sometimes we get people calling me. I've had people calling me a year later saying, well, you said the roof was fine. Well, it was fine. You lived in it for a year. There was no leaks. There was no problems. But we've had 3 hailstorms. Maybe we need to come out and have another inspection on your roof and see what happened from those last 3 storms with 60-mile-per-hour winds.
Yes.
So
yes,
that
absolutely.
does happen.
Yeah. And is there anything else that you think people need to know about the inspection process, be it buyers or agents alike?
Most importantly would be to understand that it's not going to be perfect, and there's always going to be something that's going to be found. There's certain things that we run into a lot, such as hairline stucco cracks from typical settling in Florida. We're basically building on a beach, and it's going to settle. I see new homes that have stucco cracks. A lot of those times people get a little, especially if they're out of state and they're moving here, they get a little nervous when they see that, or they think there's a problem. We do check inside and make sure there's no moisture that got in. You can get some driving rains from, say, a hurricane that might push water through those little hairline cracks. So it's always a good idea to seal those up with a little bit of caulk and paint. There's certain perimeters about, hey, if it's too big, we might want to call in a structural engineer and see if further evaluation is needed, if we need to provide additional information to the customer.
Right. So now for the fun part.
Okay.
Okay, so in the inspecting world, I'm sure you've seen some things. What are some of the craziest experiences that you've had out inspecting properties, or craziest things that you've seen?
There's a few that we've seen over the course of the years. Sometimes you could just be walking around, and it may even happen to you. You look, and there's a snake in the yard. It makes you jump a foot or two. But
No.
climbing up into an attic, looking up, and you're shining your flashlight around, and you see 4 or 5 sets of eyes looking at you like, what are you doing up here? And it's a possum up there with your babies, and you slowly let yourself back down, and because they tend to find anywhere they can nest, and they'll sometimes be up inside there.
And they can be mean too.
They can be mean, you're right, and attack. I've found an old sandwich underneath an AC system. Not sure what that was about. Maybe the renters potentially didn't like the cellar and thought, I'm going to make it smell, and they threw a sandwich under there. When I got to it, it's pretty moldy and crusty, but I'm sure for a while it didn't smell very well.
Yes.
So you tend to see some interesting things, as an inspector. So
I would imagine. Well, you're brave for crawling in there and into the attics and all of that stuff, but it gives us the information we need as agents to negotiate and as buyers to make sure that we're protected, that it's got, proper insulation, that it's got, the GFCIs, and, we don't have fire hazards, safety concerns. I remember one of the crazy stories I was there for when we, do you remember there was an electrical, there was a thing outside the building, and I was like, what's that? And as I pointed to it, sparks started shooting out of it, and then it kind of like sputters, and then like smoke, and we're like, what just happened? So it went out as you were standing there, which is
that was ironic because you had just brought it up.
Yes, for the seller that would be like worst case scenario. For the buyer, it's good that we caught it.
Correct.
But
we tend to see some interesting things. I've seen people, I don't know if they're playing jokes on me as the inspector. They had chalk outlines inside their living room of like a body, something like that. I think sometimes they like to play with us and, mess with us a little bit, but it's all good. We have a good time. And one thing that we like to ask for the buyers is give us the opportunity to run through the house, do the inspection, and then at the end, let's get together and talk about things, because a lot of times buyers will come out and they think they're helping, and I may have an electrical panel cover off or something like that, and there's safety issues with that, or I have the water running in the bathroom for a reason because I need to see if it's going to back up, and they come in and they shut it off, so
oh no,
or shut the oven off because I'm trying to check to make sure the breaker's not going to trip, and they'll shut the oven off, and I come out and I'm like, did I even turn it on? So we usually ask that the buyers come towards the end and give us the time to do our thing, because a lot of times when they interrupt us during inspection, it could cause an inspector to miss an item, because we have a flow that we like to stick to, and so we tend to just say, hey, let's just go over it at the end.
Right.
And that's a difficult thing sometimes for buyers, because I know they're very antsy. They want to learn everything about the house, and they want to be there.
They're excited. Excited to bring the fathers and the father-in-laws
and the kids and everybody picking out their rooms, which I get, and I love that, because it's nice to see people, getting excited about their new home. And but we try to just have them wait towards the end, and then we'll answer all the questions at once at the end and run through it. But
yes,
it makes it a little difficult sometimes when they're kind of underneath you. I've had one house where I set my ladder up and I climbed up onto the roof, and I look behind me, and here's a lady who was 79 years old climbing up the ladder behind me, and I'm like, ma'am, you can't do that.
Oh my gosh!
I want to see the roof. I said, that's why you hire an inspector.
Oh my gosh.
So our insurance doesn't cover that. So we have to make sure that they stay on the ground and let us handle things like the roof and going in the attic.
Good for her, though. That's cool. I mean, I admire the spunk.
She was spunky, that's for sure. She actually went into the crawl space too, and I'm like, because you never know if there's a loose wire that's a hot wire or something down there. You don't want them getting caught with that. But you have to keep an eye on people sometimes while you're actually doing the inspection. That's why we like to have them come towards the end, so we can run through our checks on all our systems, and then be able to say, okay, here's what we found in summary. And I usually like to spend at least, a half hour or whatever it takes to run through each item with my clients. Show them this is what we found, and explain to them how we'll put it together on the report, and email them over the report so they can, view it at their leisure. So.
Yes, and that's something that's been great with working with you, because I know that there's a lot of inspectors out there who just want to get in, get the job done, get out. And they'll be like, okay, we looked at this, and this was good, this was a concern, not explain why.
Yeah.
And it just, especially for I mean, I've bought lots of homes, and I want to go over it. I want to feel like I understand,
Sure.
like I'm on board. So that's something that I think really stands out about you and what you do in the inspecting world. And to have all of that knowledge in one localized source like you is
Definitely
it's
helps.
invaluable.
Yeah,
Yeah, to be able to ask those questions. And I mean, if you can construct a house from the ground up, then you can break down these little repairs or these things, and you've seen a lot, so you know what to watch out for and how to guide us as agents and as buyers. So
Absolutely.
I've been on both sides with you, and I've very much appreciated it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
what would be the best place for people to get in touch with you?
Usually, right now, I'm a one-man show. I at one point had 12 inspectors working for me, but I like being on my own, and I give the attention I need to my realtors as well as the clients. Cell phone is the best. If you can call or text, and that's usually where I'll get it quickest. Email is also good. And it's iasreports@live.com. It just stands for Inspect and Save. So it's an iasreports@live.com.
Awesome.
Those are the three main methods of people reaching out. So, yeah.
Awesome. Good deal.
All right.
We'll make sure people get in touch with you. And thank you so much for being here and sharing
Absolutely.
your wealth of knowledge with all of us. So,
Well, it helps us all if we can all go in, knowing what we're getting into and looking for.
yeah. And I have one final question for you. Do you inspect your own houses?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would if I were you, but
Well,
I wasn't sure.
Insurance-wise, the insurance companies won't let me do my own wind mitigation and my own 4-point.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I just actually had a competitor come out and do mine.
That's funny.
Yeah, but we kind of laugh and chuckle.
Yeah.
But so
That's good to know. Awesome. Good deal.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sarah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to link all of Kris's information here below. Feel free to reach out to him, whether you're an agent or a buyer. He has a wealth of knowledge. He'd be happy to work with you. And if you like this video, if you learned something new, please like and subscribe. Obviously, it helps our channel. We would love that. And stay tuned for the next one.